All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, recording on a Thursday afternoon. We'll close the show out with our best bets, but before that, we'll talk about the Colts going back to Anthony Richardson to face the Jets and the Falcons and Broncos playing, as well as the Bengals and Chargers on Sunday Night Football. A couple games there lined close to pick, but let's start off with Colts Jets. Drew, how much does Indy going back to Anthony Richardson, how much does that move the needle for you?
I think it's a positive, particularly for this matchup. The Jets' passing defense just hasn't been anywhere close to the unit that we saw from the last handful of years, and their rushing defense has been an actual liability this year. Teams have been able to out-physical them pretty consistently, and now that you bring in a mobile quarterback in Anthony Richardson for this matchup, I think that unlocks the running game for the Colts to where they should be able to dictate not just field position, time of possession, game state, pretty much from Jump Street here. I don't understand why the market is giving the Jets all of this credit right now. They are not playing very well whatsoever. And between these two teams, the Jets are the more beat up. I'm expecting that Michael Pittman will play. He was a full participant in Wednesday's practice. There's a chance DeForest Buckner may play, which is, I know he was a DNP yesterday, but some of that might be just a little bit of caution. And otherwise, this Colts team is pretty healthy. I think the fact that Richardson has had now 2 more weeks to kind of get himself healthier and kind of be able to kind of reflect on what didn't go well in his first stint. I think that is all likely helpful in his ultimate development. And he may be getting this is a nice opportunity for him to restart his tenure with some success, I think. So this is obviously Colts or pass. I don't know anyone who could make with a straight face a case that the Jets are a meaningfully better team than the Colts right now in any way. I'm kind of shocked that this is on the other side of 3. The market has been supporting the Jets blindly now for 3 weeks. I agreed with them against Houston, mostly because the injuries to Houston, more so than believing the Jets really, had something special. I kind of feel like their season comes to an end on Sunday at the hands of Anthony Richardson. And, if he's able to bring any element in terms of mobility to the table, then this could get ugly.
Yep. So I would say that the team to the public who has been lined the most inexplicably this season has been the Jets, just in terms of people I talk to who are football fans and are aware of the lines but don't bet professionally or anything. A lot of people are just baffled by the fact that the Jets were favored in Houston against Houston, that they were favored in Arizona as well. Do you think that what do you think is propelling that? Is there something about the underlying stats for the Jets that makes the market believe that there is something else here, or is this just wrong?
Someone's martingaling. They keep losing and they keep doubling down on the Jets. I think it's just wrong. I think that there's pretty clearly whatever happened in the final quarter of last season, where the defense was so taxed by holding this team up in the absence of having a functional quarterback. They just broke. And some of these veteran players, particularly at the second level, CJ Mosley, good example, Quincy Williams, the safeties, all of them have taken huge steps backwards, and that is now putting more pressure on the cornerbacks. Gardner has been nowhere close to the level of quality we've seen from him as a pro this year. DJ Reed is small. Michael Carter is fine, but the strength of this team, which was supposed to be the defense that wasn't going to be asked to do as much this year, has completely eroded out from under them. And maybe there was something special about what Robert Saleh was doing in the game planning. I have a tough time believing that, but it's possible that he was a somewhat important part of preparing this defense. It could be that they just don't really have much of a pass rush to speak of outside of Will McDonald, and when Will McDonald is on the field, their run defense is an absolute abomination. And so I think just in general the pieces aren't fitting together well. The leadership is not necessarily stepping up to kind of be the voice in the room that's like, hey guys, we need to pull this together or our season is lost. I think they kind of feel like the season is lost. Their coach was fired. Their GM's probably not long for this organization. There's going to be a clean house in the offseason. A lot of these players aren't going to ultimately have long-term roles on this team. A lot of the swings that they took in free agency on the offensive line have been busts. You've seen regression from really promising young players like Breece Hall and Sauce Gardner, and outside of the continued belief that Garrett Wilson is an elite wide receiver one, I'm not sure what the bright spots are as far as building for the future here. And it just doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers is capable of playing quarterback anywhere close to his 2021 MVP level, which now feels like 30 years ago, not 3 years ago.
Indeed. No, I agree with everything there. All right. Before we get to Falcons, Broncos, Oregon's march to the college football playoff continues on Saturday night as the Ducks face an upset-minded Wisconsin team at Camp Randall Stadium. Coverage of the Big Ten Showdown begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We'll be on the pregame show for that one, talking about the Heisman market, which I think is very interesting. All right. Let's talk about Falcons, Broncos. Also very interesting. To me, Drew, the team that is the most nebulous or most maybe interesting to talk about in terms of what their rating is might be the Broncos, because this was a team that came into the season with expectations of being dreadful and looked like that after week one against the Seahawks. Bo Nix has had stretches where he's looked like close to the worst quarterback in football. Now he's gone through a prolonged stretch of looking like a very solid quarterback. And now they get this Falcons team who are the epitome of blah. And this line is suggesting that the Broncos are slightly better than the Falcons on neutral, which doesn't really line up with what my understanding of what these teams' ratings are or should be. But what do you think this line says about where the Falcons are at?
This was the first one that jumped out to me as I looked across the numbers before I checked my own, kind of starting point for the week. And I was like, Falcons are 2.5-point dogs? What?
Yeah.
Like, no. That doesn't pass the smell test at all. Like there was an audible like, huh? And I didn't play them because I was like, there must be more to this. There's got to be some, something underpinning this, because the Falcons' result from last week was not was not quantitatively saying that they were overrated.
No, they were very unlucky.
They were very unlucky. Right. So I don't think anyone really comes into this game with a thumbs down on the Falcons from their performance last week. It's got to be the injuries. The Falcons are dealing with quite a lot of injuries, and they're on the second, back-to-back travel week going to play at altitude. And so this is a pretty gross spot to back the Falcons, which ultimately kept me from betting them, despite the fact that I can't make this anywhere close to Broncos -2.5. I will say that the re-injury to Troy Anderson is notable. He's been kind of one of their more important defensive pieces, and his absence was greatly felt, not just in the games he missed, but after he came out of that game against the Saints. Really, the fact that they had no way of getting the Saints off the field, I thought is a bad sign for a Broncos team that is not a spectacular offense, but boy, does this feel like an opportunity for the Broncos offense to do a little flexing, to do a little, you want us to play safe football and just move the sticks on you and ball control you to death. We'll do that. And I think maybe that's where the market's head is at in this game, as you have a potential positive matchup in favor of the Broncos defense at least being able to in some ways limit the strengths of the Falcons offense, maybe even get after Kirk Cousins, who is not not at all mobile right now, and the pass rush for the Broncos defense has been pretty impressive so far this season. So that could be ultimately the distinguishing factor that gets this win home for the Broncos. But I think ultimately it's mostly the health of Denver, which is right now pretty superlative. They're only a player missing. I apologize. They had no players missing practice. Josh Reynolds was designated in return. That was the only note that I saw. So just superlative health right now for Denver, and a positive matchup for their offense against a defense that has huge questions and a bunch of injuries. And then on the flip side, maybe the pass rush is enough to bring out bad Kirk Cousins here. But I guess I'm not going to be surprised if Atlanta wins this game, just because I have a much higher rating on their offense. Just for kind of transparency, I make the Atlanta offense 11th best in the NFL right now. I would make them 1 point better than an average team on a neutral. And Denver On the flip side, I have their offense as 26th best in the NFL right now, but I have their defense third, and I think their overall aggregate is 1.2 points worse than average on a neutral. So for me, at least, this should only really reflect home field and situation. And I guess if you're going to assume that you're going to get sort of a C or a D performance out of the Falcons because of the injuries and because of the second week in a row traveling and playing at altitude and all that and outdoors and all those factors, then fine, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think we talk about matchups and matchups specifically impacting prices and ratings in the NBA playoffs and how, or rather the matchup factors don't really impact pricing because it's more just team rating v team rating, because anticipating how Nikola Jokic is going to look guarding Damian Lillard on switches or whatever, that's just very nebulous and difficult to kind of condense to a number in terms of how team strengths and weaknesses line up against each other. But clearly it does matter to some extent. And I wonder with the Falcons, and I'd be interested if you think this is impacting the pricing for this game in particular, but the Falcons are a team who obviously heavily built around Kirk Cousins and his capabilities. And Kirk Cousins is extremely vulnerable to a good pass rush as he cannot move anymore. Yeah. And we saw what he looked like against the Steelers in week 1, where he looked like, a sub NFL quarterback as TJ Watt was just gobbling him up play after play. He's had other games where he was horrific against the Seahawks, who don't even have a great pass rush, I don't think, but he was just dreadful in that game. Don't think he was particularly good against the Chiefs back in primetime in week 3. Meanwhile, he has looked phenomenal against teams that do not have pass rushes, like the Bucks twice or the Cowboys without Micah Parsons. So do you think that the fact that the Broncos do have a good pass rush, and they do have Satan on the back end, which helps you pass rush, and they have strong safety play, do you think the matchup elements specifically are kind of impacting the pricing?
I do. And in particular, the health of the offensive line. Because the Seahawks game that you referenced, at least from my kind of questionable recollection, the offensive line was a little banged up in that one, and they have otherwise been playing really, really solid football this year. I think at full strength and at full health, this Falcons offensive line is top 5. But you have 2 of their more important pieces in Chris Lindstrom and Drew Dahlman right now dealing with injuries. You've had a couple of guys on and off IR so far this season, although right now both McGarry and Matthews look good to go for this game. So I think a little bit of the kind of rotating cast of characters on the offensive line has played a factor as well. But this is going to be a very, very, very tough test for them, where they have not faced a D line that can generate pressures consistently as Denver has pretty much all season. I guess maybe since week 1 against Pittsburgh, really. And I think that in general, the fact that it's on the road, a hostile environment, outdoor type of conditions, and the fact that their defense could put them in a negative game state, all of that spells fragility. What does a 7-point deficit look like for this Falcons team in the second half? What does a 10-point deficit look like? Like, are they just done? And I think that that is enough for me to be very cautious and just basically scratch Falcons, even though my numbers say that there's an edge there.
Yep, I think that makes sense. No weather or wind really, but it will be a chilly day in Denver. So those old creaky joints for Kirk Cousins might be getting work out against the Broncos pass rush. All right, the Stars are out in Los Angeles for Sunday Night Football when Justin Herbert and the Chargers host Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Tune in to NBC and Peacock at 7 p.m. Eastern as we lead you up to kickoff in Southern California.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, Sunday Night Football, Bengals-Chargers. Chargers 1.5-point favorites at home. So far, the total is 47 flat. If the Bengals lose this game, Drew, they will be 4-7, which is quite jarring, but this is what happens when you lose to Jacoby Brissett at home. Do you have any bet on this game?
I do. I think Chargers under 3 points is a very solid bet, one of the better bets of the week. And I would kind of go long arc here with my Chargers number and just acknowledge that I go bottom up player level, and nothing about this roster impressed me to start the season defensively. Nothing about the way that I didn't see any scheme wrinkles. I didn't see any, way that they were deploying players who were underperforming it for years, kind of manifesting as a functional defense to start the season. And I had them consistently rated in the 20s. And I'm looking at the EPA and I'm like, this is all because of opponents. They played no one. Like as soon as they go up against a good quarterback or a good team, this is all going to come down like a house of cards. Well, it hasn't. You play the schedule you're dealt. It is what it is. They have not played a difficult schedule, but they are number 2 right now in EPA per play allowed. They are number 1 if you remove turnovers. And I think that just goes to say that even though they have had injuries to their most important pass rushers in Mack and Bosa, guys, they barely played any snaps last week, and it didn't really matter. They generated just infinite pressure against the Tennessee Titans, and they're just well coached. They're well prepared. They're scheming their secondary players extremely well, and they're getting guys in good positions to succeed and developing young players who were names that I just did not have especially strong ratings on coming into this season. Cam Hart is a bona fide CB1. Did not see that coming. You have ability to kind of use Derwin James as a more functional piece because he's not being asked to kind of make up for deficiencies all across the secondary otherwise. So he's a more effective player. Christian Fulton is playing very good football this season, and your safeties are Gilman and Molden. I mean, these guys were absolute just non-playable characters, in my opinion, to start the season. They're playing really, really good football. And so I am just kind of conceding that this is just a flat out good defense. And when Cincinnati has gone up against good defenses this year, they haven't looked great. And I don't really have a good, strong read on what's going on with the two kind of key injuries in this one. T. Higgins, when he is on the field, he does unlock a lot more capability of the passing offense for the Bengals. And Orlando Brown is a very, very good tackle. And both guys, Orlando Brown was a DNP, and T. Higgins feels like he's making some business decisions. I don't ultimately know if he's going to play or not, but this Bengals offense doesn't really pass the smell test right now, that they are capable of going up against an elite defense and really putting up some sincere points and some sincere pressure. And then on the other side of the ball, this Bengals defense is brutal. Trey Hendrickson is hurt. BJ Hill was a DNP. Logan Wilson hasn't been playing well at all this season. He was limited in practice. And so you have in general an issue up the spine of the defense stopping the run. You're going up against an all-universe offensive line that the Chargers are trotting out there, and you're going up against Justin Herbert playing very professional, safe football, and kind of building into the season, developing a little bit of chemistry with his weapons. Things seem to be pointing very clearly in the up direction for the Chargers in almost every aspect, and you have to kind of tip your hat to just the fact that they're well coached and developing their young players well. And Cincinnati, on the other hand, feels like they're floundering. So I don't get why there's so much belief and support in Cincinnati being able to save their season in this spot. I know they have extra rest coming off of Thursday Night Football. I know that the Chargers really haven't played anyone this season, but I still think that This should be more like 3.5 for the Chargers. So I'll lay the points.
Okay. Yeah, it's strange with the Bengals offense because as dynamic and explosive as they were against Baltimore, in both games against Baltimore, in last week's encounter, as much as they put up those numbers, it did feel like it wasn't a super sustainable recipe in terms of, look, it's like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, it's always going to be a good offense, but in terms of being, a top 3 type of offense, I thought it was instructive and kind of symbolic that final drive where they score the touchdown, they start off with 3 incomplete passes, and it's 4th and 10 straight away, and then they get the 4th and 10 conversion and they may not have even got it, but if they got it by an inch. And so it just kind of speaks to how the offense is really dependent on like these 70-yard Jamar Chase bombs or catch and runs, which is Jamar Chase. It's Joe Burrow. It's not like those are total fluke outlier plays, but obviously not entirely sustainable, as the other great offenses, where it just feels like Lamar Jackson and that Baltimore offense is just going to be unstoppable every single week, whereas the Bengals kind of couldn't do anything against the Eagles when they played them a couple of weeks ago at home with 2.5-point favorites and ultimately got blown out. So yeah, I'm with you. I think the Chargers, I think these teams are, virtually neck and neck if T. Higgins plays, and T. Higgins is practicing for a second consecutive day. So that would move the needle a bit. The Bengals certainly suspect that this isn't going to be an early season type of Bengals performance of wayward focus, given that this is effective. Like if they lose this game, they're probably going to have to run the slate to make the playoffs.
I disagree.
You think they can still make it if they lose?
Yeah, I think there's
very easy schedule.
There's a real world where 8 and 9 gets you the 7th seed in the AFC.
Sure. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I guess it's very dire. If you pencil in the Chargers for one of the wild card spots, and then you pencil in the AFC North for another one, it's going to be teams like I think it's going to come down to the Bengals and Broncos ultimately with the Colts.
Maybe the Dolphins, maybe the Colts. Yeah.
Dolphins are no good. Tua is not. He's not the answer. That was a very bad quarterback showdown between Tua and Stafford on Monday night. And yeah, we'll see. Tua hasn't looked good all season, even before he got hurt. Like people, it was kind of swept under the rug a little bit how bad Tua was in that week 2 game against the Bills before he got hurt. But anyway, yeah, I guess that they will vaguely be in the mix, the Dolphins, but yeah, this is, if the Bengals right now, they're like plus 150 or so in the market to make the playoffs. If they lose this, they're going to drift out. It won't all be over, but it will be on life support. Last one on these 2 teams. Do you think that Joe Burrow will resonate as a comeback player of the year candidate? Because right now he's second favorite in the market, and he hurt his wrist last year. So not as traumatic of an injury as other candidates have come back from. I think everyone thought he was going to be good this year, and the team is 4-6, though he is playing at an incredibly high level. If you just go by performance of the candidates, then Burrow is the clear winner. But this is largely a story award. Do you think he has a story that will resonate?
I don't really understand why it's not. He's playing hurt. Like he's missed, he's limited in practice every single week, and he's playing through it and he's playing well. I'm not sure why that's not a fun story to tell or write. I kind of don't get it.
They're 4-6, and it's like
they're 4-6, yeah.
And also, like, it's a wrist. Like, it's not, his leg didn't snap in half or something. I get that it's like,
it's his throwing hand.
Yeah,
that's. Kirk Cousins may or may not have an Achilles. We have no idea because he doesn't move. But he's his arm's fine. So yeah, no, I don't really understand the comeback player of the year market at all. No. I think Burrow's story resonates more than Kyler Murray's, who played the final 8, who came back last year. Like, I'm not sure I understand how this pricing is shaping up whatsoever. And I guess ultimately, if the Falcons just kind of cruise control their way with this easy schedule into a 3 seed, then it's probably just Kirk. But I don't know. I'm impressed. I thought Burrow was. I thought that injury was like low key potentially career altering. And the fact that he's playing through it this year and maybe comes back at full strength next year is a really positive sign, not just for the Bengals franchise, but for NFL football in general, because we need more good quarterbacks. And now maybe the Bengals molder around him. But that said, his presence and ability to play quarterback is pretty doggone impressive.
Yeah. I think I go the other way on Kyler just because he actually does have a comeback arc in that he's the number one pick. He was it's halfway through 2021. He's the MVP favorite. Cardinals are the 1 seed. Career kind of goes in the tank a little bit. There's talks like, is he going to get traded? Is he the future of the team? Call of Duty stuff. And yeah, he came back last year, but he came back on like a 1-7 team that was playing out the string. So I think he does fit the mold of like the comeback story because he is the one. Like no one, I don't think people for the most part, I think people thought Joe Burrow was going to be good. Like Joe Burrow came into the season as like third favorite to win MVP. The Bengals had a win total of 10.5, which they're going to go under. The Cardinals are like right now a coin flip to win the division over the Niners. And I think they had a win total of 6.5. So I get it. It's like a little bit messy because Kyler did come back last year, but I think it's kind of, this is the comeback season. With Kirk, I'm with you. Like, I think that Kirk is probably the most likely guy to win because he's just going to be on every ballot. But like, I don't find it super impressive that Kirk Cousins came back from an Achilles and is going to win the worst division in football, being unable to move. I don't know. Kirk Cousins is doing exactly what I thought he would be doing.
Yeah.
I think Burrow is playing better than I thought he would.
Yes, same.
And I think Kyler is playing better than I thought he would too.
Okay.
And then you can make like guys like J.K. Dobbins and stuff. They're the ones who are really over the most physical hardship. But I just don't think he's going to get the
people. People are going to be mad if I don't ask. What do you think about Hamlin on the odds board right now?
I think that he could win if there's a groundswell of content and campaigning behind him, and everyone else just is kind of uninspiring. But ultimately, like it's just the.
If there's what's the shame vote like for Hamlin?
I just don't think people care. And I don't think people ever really cared that much about Hamlin, which was my misread, is that I thought that people did care about a guy dying on the field and coming back to play football, but apparently not. I think people just, like, it is a momentum award in a sense. And so, what are you doing on the field? And Damar Hamlin being like an average NFL safety on a really good Bills team. I just don't think that resonates as much as like, the quarterbacks who are winning games and winning divisions and putting up big stats. Like I think that's ultimately what it will come down to. I wouldn't say Hamlin is 0%. Same way I wouldn't say like if Nick Chubb is like a top 3 running back the rest of the way.
Yes.
That kind of momentum gathering. But, what are the odds that Nick Chubb is a top 3 running back on that team behind that offensive line? We'll see. Now he's got a week off the bye. He gets a weak defense against the Saints. I suspect his odds are probably going to shorten coming into the following week. But yeah, weird, kind of uninspiring market at the moment. Anyway, let's jump to our best bets. What do you got, Drew?
Let's not malign the Browns' offensive line, Jay.
Okay,
because they're finally at full strength. Like this is probably one of the most injury-riddled units that has existed in football throughout the season. We now are going to war with a completely healthy and rested offensive line and a Nick Chubb who is ascending. If you made me say Kirk Cousins doesn't, I'll come in from the future and you say hey, Kirk Cousins doesn't win comeback player of the year, go make a bet right now. Chubb would be my pick. I think there is definitely an arc where he wins some voters their fantasy football championship by having like a spectacular week 14, 15, 16, 17 type of run. And I think the offensive line could be a huge reason why. On top of that, you'd basically just have a very healthy Browns team here. And I think the fact that there are huge red flags and issues all across the offense for the Saints is being underappreciated by the market. There is still a very sincere lack of talent at the wide receiver position. I'm not sure if you saw against the Falcons, Jay, but the big game breaker was MVS for the Saints. Okay, well, I think that's a fair ask for Denzel Ward to take MVS out of the game. And ultimately, I think The offensive line for the Saints is a problem up against this pass rush, which is still very violent and very capable, even in the absence of Zadarius Smith. I think Cleveland is primed for a people forgot about us type of performance here, where they don't just win, but they win by margin. I think they should be a small favorite here. The market has trended in their direction all week. I agree with it. I love it. I think Brown's pick is the best bet on the board for the week.
Okay, I like it. No disagreement there. I still cannot shake how atrocious the Saints defense looked, particularly against the Broncos. That was the most offensive of their various offending performances as a defense, and they were very, very lucky, to your point, to beat the Falcons last week. All right, my best bet, I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens -3 in Pittsburgh. I think he is a mirage. He is getting extremely lucky with these ridiculous jump balls that keep getting like tipped to Pat Freiermuth or more often George Pickens. I don't think that is sustainable offense. I think the Pittsburgh defense is good but not great, and this Baltimore offense is unguardable. And the fact that the Ravens coming in off of extra rest after a scare against Cincinnati, I think will help. I don't love that Kyle Hamilton is in some doubt, but I'm not particularly frightened by this Pittsburgh offense. The Ravens have the best run defense in the NFL, which means that it's probably going to be Russ throwing through the air, which is where you tend to throw the football, I guess. But I just don't think that he's going to have this sustained success with these deep balls, and I think the Ravens will roll. So, yes, a rude awakening coming at last for Russell Wilson, and Lamar Jackson, the MVP, covers -3. All right. We are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. For myself and Drew, good luck this weekend.